Hey, welcome to Art with Ian. Today we're talking about creature design. That's coming up next. All right, welcome to episode 4 of the creature design series. Today we are talking about blocking color. So, in the last episode we went over the rough sketch from the thumbnailing episode and we did some line cleanup. And so that gives us a pretty decent roadmap to start going in and looking at where we want to push our details and that kind of thing. But before we get into that kind of stuff, the very first thing I want to do is get a mask down, something that I can clip other layers to and have it stay within my mask. So in order to do that, basically I've got the lasso tool pulled up, and the way that you get the lasso tool is the hotkey for that is just to hit L. Now I'm not going to try and make a perfect selection here. Basically, all I'm doing is going around. I find it's quicker to do this and just erase, because I want it to be pretty precise anyways. So at the end of the day, that no matter how hard you try to do this perfectly, unless unless that's the way you work all the time and you're constantly using the lasso, chances are you're going to mess up and you'll have to get in there and erase and add and all that kind of stuff anyways. So I've found over the years I've gotten less and less worried about getting a perfect selection in, because I just go in and erase anyways. Oh, we're on the wrong layer. Always create a layer. So let's create a layer underneath our sketches. So you can see I've got thumb 6, that's my original thumbnail. And then I've got layer 3 that I should have named line cleanup, but I didn't. I'm going to name this mask and fill it in. And then I'm just going to hit Control D to deselect that. And then I'm going to hit E to pull up my eraser. Let's make sure I get a hard eraser for this. And I'm just going to start erasing everything out. I want to turn my thumbnail off, so that just takes stuff out of the equation. And then I'm going to turn the opacity on my line drawing way down. And the reason I'm doing that is because now I can see a lot better whether or not I'm actually erasing away where I want to be erasing away. So for example, if you want everything to come in your mask to come out to the line, then you need to be able to properly kind of see that. A nice trick for going long and kind of straight curving lines like this is to hold down Shift. You click in a spot, you hold down Shift, and while you're still holding it, see how it says Shift below the circle? That means I'm holding it down. While you're holding it, just click the new area that you want to draw a straight line to, and it'll draw a straight line. And the reason it's nice to have that is when you're doing long, kind of almost straight but slightly curving types of lines, it can be a little bit hard to get it to line up. Like this one's not so bad, it's not quite as long, but and also there's a certain amount of, like, when you first get started, your confidence, your line strokes and things, like I didn't actually warm up before I hit record. I probably should have, but it's usually smart to warm up, just do some amount of just basic line, make some straight lines, make some circles, so just some average geometric shapes, that kind of thing. And that can be a good way to just warm the old hand up, But yeah, when all else fails, that Shift trick is a really nice way to kind of get good, clean, straight lines or slightly curving lines. I'm using my bracket keys, bracket right to enlarge my brush and bracket left to size my brush down. and I pretty much just keep my fingers, 2 fingers on the bracket keys the whole time. That's pretty much where I leave my fingers, and then if I want to grab a different hotkey, I move. But for the most part, I'm toggling brush size when I work. It's probably faster, realistically, after you get a little bit of a border going to just grab the lasso tool and lasso the stuff back out. But I tend not to think to do that. Once I get going, I kind of just do. And part of that's probably because, you know, I did traditional art for, I don't know, like 20... Oh, sorry about that. I didn't turn my phone volume off. I did traditional art for like 28 or 29 years before I ever touched a legitimate digital tablet. Like, I did some digital stuff with a mouse, like, you know, growing up, like Kid Pix on a Mac. Does anyone remember that? That's at my age. I don't know if that even still exists. I haven't used a Mac in a while, but you know, I did stuff with a mouse and all that, but the first time I ever, you know, got my hands on a real tablet, actually someone I knew. I was one of those kind of like, traditional's what I've always done, and traditional's good enough for me. I enjoy the feeling of putting lines down on paper and brushes, you know, paint brushes and those kinds of things. And someone I knew actually, they kind of nagged at me to try digital, and eventually I did, and then of course I fell in love with it because it was like, wait a minute, you mean I have every color I could ever want in endless supply? Let me turn my phone volume off here. And I can make brushes, and I can, you know, I have all of these amazing options, like, and it feels super organic. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing digital art. It feels like I'm just making art, and it just so happens to be on a computer. And so yeah, I fell in love with it. But anyways, all that to say, I tend to slip back into the mindset of a traditional artist, where I don't think about the digital tools as often as maybe someone who has been, you know, started out doing digital art early in their art career, and so that's just part of the general workflow mindset kind of a thing, you know. But I should fill that in. So if I see an area where I need to where I didn't like actually get the line far enough out, and I need to fill out, back out like that there in this here, I use the hard round brush. So the reason I do that is just because I want my initial mask to be super solid. I want it to be as solid as so if I want a hard edge or a hard surface, I already have it. And if I decide I want to make that softer or more organic, I do that as I work the drawing. So I like to start with nice hard edges first. And then, yeah. Oh, that sucked. Oh, here's a tip. Try to let go as you work, like just lift up off the canvas briefly every now and again, so that you don't end up, because if you're not careful and you leave your pen down, if you mess up and you hit Control Z, you lose like everything you did since the last time you lifted your pen up. So try to just, it can be hard to remember, but every now and again just try to get in there and just lift it. Yeah, just lift it up. So this is kind of a bit of a timely process, and it can seem like, well, why not just color it all in? You know, just color it in and be done with it. Well, like the normal kind of way, you know. The reason I don't do that is because at the end of the day, it actually takes longer to color in to the lines than it does to erase away. And I'm not exactly sure why, to be honest with you, but it does. And I mean that there may be some people who that's not true for. There's generally always someone who's, you know, finds things different. But the people I generally have spoken with about it, and you know, other artists that I know, that have all felt pretty similarly about it. It's just, for whatever reason, it's just faster to erase away. Maybe because you don't. It's easier to think about removing to the line than it is to think about getting up to the line. I'm not sure, but I think there's actually two spikes right there. Technically speaking, I should probably be adding more spikes as I go along this. I don't think I added quite as many as I really wanted. But I'm just going to follow my drawing for now, and it's really easy to add little things like that in later. As I look at the silhouette and I think, oh, I want to push this part of the silhouette or whatever, I can definitely do that. This is honestly like the longest part of the color blocking process. After we get this done, it's really just you have a few options. We're gonna go over a few of the ways you can approach doing your color. I have references. You may remember, if you've been following the series, I've got references on another sheet, like on another canvas on my monitor up above me, and I'm going to use some of the references. I'm just going to pull some textures straight out of there and slap them onto my mask here to help get, you know, some tooth into my drawing. And if you want it to be like less complex, less dense, like the design, if you want the design to be less dense looking, then I wouldn't recommend doing that, because reality is really dense. If you're going for a more cartoony or light looking, you know, like maybe you just want to do like some basic cell shading, like you know, Zelda Wind Waker, that like really, really clean cell shaded look that they did for that game. You probably won't want to be adding any photo stuff. Looks like I need to fill that in right there. So using the shift trick, I'm just gonna get that filled in right there. And I think we're pretty clean here. So, all right, so now we've got our mask. And if you've never used a mask before, if you've never created a mask like this before, basically what we're doing, the reason why it's a mask is because we can clip layers to this now, and nothing will come outside the line. I have a video on making clipping masks, which I can put a link up for that, if you're interested in kind of all of the things you can do with that. But basically, so if I create a new layer now, and I hold down Alt, if I hover between my mask layer and the new layer I made, you'll see that a square will come up with a down arrow. And when that comes up, if I click now, this layer, you'll see that it is indented and that there's a down arrow pointing at the layer that I called mask. Now, if I were to get this crazy like purple color and I wanted to draw in here, let's say I wanted to use a textured brush. So let me size this down. So let's say I want to use my utility texture 2. I can blow this up and start laying in texture, and you'll see that it doesn't go outside. It won't go outside my mask. So if I unclip this, holding Alt, same process to unclip as it was to clip. Holding Alt, if I unclip this, you'll see what I actually painted. See how it's everywhere, but because it's clipped, it stays inside. So this is great for putting in texture. It's great for blowing a brush up to do big shading gradations. Like let's say I wanted to just to do like a shading pass with like a, you know, I was doing like a soft, like a simple type of soft shading kind of look. You know, you can just have your brush like nice and big and get in and just do whatever you want, and you're basically gold. Nothing comes out the lines. So that's why it's worth the effort to make a good mask for this reason. Basically, that it just, once you've got it in, it's like the whole rest of your process is sped up exponentially. So anyways, let's go ahead and delete this layer. And now, like I said, I'm gonna get some textures from my ref sheet. So let me just pull this down here for you to look at real quick. So here's the turtle reference. I really like this texture on his arm here, and then this texture in the transitioning flesh from his head to his shell is really good. Great texture going on there. Also, I really love the king crab textures, so I'll probably be slapping some of that on my the shell area and stuff like that. And basically what it's going to do, it's going to help me, it's going to I'm going to basically paint up from that. So let's go ahead and just grab, I'm just going to grab the crab. Oh, it's cheesy. Okay, I'm just going to grab this to start with. And it looks like the layer locked in here. There we go. Okay. If you go into this F mode where you can't see anything and you hit F7, it'll pull your layers back up. And if you keep a few things that you want off on it, like if you have a dual monitor situation, then you can drag them back in. And I kind of like to work this way where it keeps everything really clean looking, especially when I'm doing videos, because then there's just less stuff for you to look at that's not important. Okay, so that's really weird. Oh, I know what's going on. I actually have to get to the layer. That is my crap. Turns out. Overall ref sheet. Sometimes it doesn't matter how long you've been working with a program. You still have moments. I know I do. Okay, so here's our kind of crab-like texture. Now, I'm not really worried about it looking like it fits because, like I said, I'm using it to paint up from, right? So I'm just gonna kind of get it on here a bit, and then I'll paste another one, and just kind of, I'm taking a little bit of care with it, but it's not a lot, you know. Don't labor over this because at the end of the day, you will be painting, you know. The solution is still you painting. This is just a good way to get the tooth down on your work. Get one more, I think. Also, I'm not going to be using this color. Actually, I haven't decided if I want to use this on his forearms, this texture, or if I want to use just the what a turtle forearm looks like. But for now, I think I'll just try it. Okay, I'm gonna merge all of these. Merge layers. And then I'm going to hold Alt to clip it down. That puts it into my image. Now I'm gonna grab my eraser and push it out of some of these areas that I don't want it. I should probably turn my line art back up so I can see my, there we go, better. So that goes to that. This. Okay. Then I want to get my turtle. And I really like the texture on his arm, and so it's really, I'm like kind of torn between using the crab armor and the texture on his arm. But for now, I'm just gonna grab like texture from his body. And use that. Like right here. Okay. I'm getting my Chalky render brush out, which I'll put a link for that, how to make that, up in the corner. So now you can see that I've got this great color palette happening now because I pulled from real life. I'm gonna drag this underneath the shell so that it's where I want it. So now I can just use, holding down Alt to get my color picker up, I can just use my color palette to start blocking in areas where I'm not gonna, take the time to, I'm not gonna sit and put textures over the entire subject. I just wanna get something I can work with visually, like to get that tooth down on my work and start just seeing some of the colors that I want to use, kind of a thing. Some of it's a little dark because of there's actually shadow in that image, and I don't have shadow yet, so I'm making local color pass here. And what local color is, if you don't know, is basically what the colors are before shadow and light. Well, before light, really, because without light you don't have shadow. You just have the absence of light, which is complete darkness. But yeah, so basically before light hits something and changes the color because of the light on it, think of whatever the color of that thing is without anything else attached. And that's basically local color. I want to make sure that I'm, getting texture ideas in here early on. But I will probably get some textures, like maybe from an elephant and pull other textures like later on in the process as well, to help. Because I'm going for a semi-photorealistic creature design here. I want it to be something that you could present to someone who doesn't really have the best ability to visualize something that's more artistically stylized as being real. This is for like the thing you show to that person who's like, if it doesn't look realistic, they kind of almost can't grasp it, kind of a thing, right? So I think I'm going to actually backtrack that. Get into my shell. So I don't want my shell to be the color of a crab. So I need to, I should probably deal with that now, so when I'm pulling from it, I'm getting the right colors. I want to go with this kind of green, sort of green and brown and dinosaur-y, like, reptilian kind of aesthetic with the color palette. Like very grayed out, something that would camouflage well in swamp-like conditions, because the way I see this guy is like, it hasn't been that long in his evolutionary kind of journey as a creature since he was like a full-on creature of the water. He might even still be an amphibian, though I won't claim to know enough about amphibians to push a design that sells that, but I'm thinking I probably am. There's probably a few things that I'm missing to make it feel truly like an amphibian. But anyways, let's go ahead and shift the colors on this. So I'm gonna pull up a down here. I'm gonna create an adjustment layer, and I'm gonna go with hue saturation, and then I'm going to attach that same way that you clip a layer. I'm gonna attach that to this layer, and I'm gonna just, the problem is we're clipped though. Everything's clipped. So I'm actually going to unclip for a moment here. I'm gonna unclip this, and then it'll just be the shell that I'm messing with. So I'm gonna pull this around. It's too saturated. Something like this is pretty good. And we'll just go for that. And then I'm going to merge these layers and then clip this back down. Okay, and now now we're somewhere better. So I can just keep pulling from this, and it's excuse me. You can see like the resolution and stuff from the photograph. Like this, it all needs to be and the way that light's affecting it and stuff, it all needs to be painted down a bit. Like right now it's too dense and it's too obviously a photograph. What I want to get out of it is the texture, right? I want to get the color palette, the color variations and things, right? So I'm going through and I'm just kind of using my color picker and just kind of loosely painting out some of the stuff that, you know, that makes it overly photographic looking, and just kind of trying to pull it into my design. Because like I said before, at the end of the day, we want this to look like our painting, not like we slapped photographs all around. This is just a nice shortcut to help get us that dense look that we want. Now, I don't know if I'm actually really doing his arms the same kind of material as the shell up top. I just don't know if it's working. I don't want to give up on it too early, but because I do think that it makes sense, like I spoke about in the last episode, it makes a certain amount of sense evolutionarily for this creature to have these, you know, bashing, you know, his arms like capable of breaking stuff with it, to get to things, bashing to defend itself, and that kind of a thing. So yeah, it's like I don't want to give up on it quite yet, but I don't know, it just kind of isn't really working for me as a look. It just kind of it almost looks too contrived, I suppose. Could be part of my problem. We want variation in color. This is a big deal. So when you look at the real stuff, and that's part of the reason why we pulled from photographs to get our color palette started, because it's really easy to not realize how much variation there is in just the random or the average coloration of stuff in the world. There's a ton of variation, and you know, if you're going to go for any kind of even semi real, believability goes way down when you don't vary up the color quite a lot. And one thing I love about my chalky brush is that it's really good for rendering. Like you can get a really subtle renders with it. And then you can blow it up a bit and actually get some nice tooth as well, some texture. So definitely love this brush. It's definitely my buddy. Since I made it, I think I've used it for roughly 95% of everything that I've drawn. I mean, it's something crazy for sure. It's a lot. So this isn't light like this. What I'm doing right now, it's not light hitting his flesh and creating a bright spot. It's literally his flesh having this pattern in it. So I want to make that distinction like as clear as possible. Like there is literally no light happening right now. This is literally just the patterns on his shells, his shell-like materials, and then the patterns on his flesh-like materials, and that's it. That's all it is. gonna get, I think this here, go down into here. It looks like I missed a spot right there when I was filling in. I also think it looks to me like I was thinking of doing this shell in the leg. Probably said that in the last episode. So I might just kind of emulate to some degree the general look. And come over and do this one. Just being really, really loose and spontaneous. This is not focal point land over here. It's probably going to be in a pretty deep shadow, and I don't want the viewer to find the leg the most interesting thing to look at. So I will not be pushing a ton of detail in my rendering down in this area. So it doesn't have to be epic in its level of detail. Just needs to still hold up, of course. I want it to hold up, but I don't want it to feel like the most interesting thing on the drawing. I'm just going for a bit of like bent. These parts of the body have bent over and over, and as this creature's grown up, it's you've got all the growth lines and the bendable parts. Where things bend and flex a lot, you tend to have lots of wrinkles, that kind of a thing. So I'm just painting some discoloration to help push that along when I go to render and stuff, Following the forms loosely, obviously. Everything I'm doing right now is quite loose, for sure. Let's pull some of this color down into here. Maybe he's got like a skin tone variation near the knuckle, near the knee. If you look at your own flesh and study it a bit, you'll find tons of variations. Like, what's the color of your skin on your knuckles compared to the color of your skin on your forehead or your chin, for example. Just take a look at it. That's for people who struggle, if you struggle at all to paint believable humans, like skin. Probably one of the main, outside of just properly rendering like with light and shadow, outside of that, it's probably a lack of variation in the skin, the tones of it. Oops. Just getting a little bit more texture going. Pulling from that really lovely texture here on the shoulder that I still had left. Okay. Let's see, what does he need? Oh, it looks like this arm over here is still really dark. Oh. I do like that color though, it's nice and rich looking. So maybe I should add a little bit more of that in over here. I kind of want maybe just some little spots and things on his shell surface here. Something to just break this up a little bit. And I'm wondering about a slight hue, like a full-on hue variation. We've got, I don't want him to look like he wouldn't blend in, but at the same time, sometimes the hue variation can actually make you more camouflaged, depending on your environment. So we might give that a go really quick, just to see. Let's see, what would it be? Maybe a little bit of blue, like a tiny hint of blue in there, a bit in places. We can try that. Just gonna create a new layer, clip it down to my mask, and so if we want it to feel a little bit more blue when we're working this warm, we don't actually want blue. This is kind of a bit of the color is relative, and so for something to start feeling cooled off, it doesn't actually have to be pushed to the color you think it or that it needs to be. Like, stuff will start looking blue by contrast to all this warm brown quite quickly just by adding gray. I'm just going to push up a tiny bit towards my cooler, and then I'm going to grab like a gray, and we'll just see what that looks like over the top. See if we've gone far enough for it to cool off quite a bit. So you can see right here where I'm painting, that looks really cool comparative to what we were just working with. But I think it's probably actually pretty good. I do need to stay subtle with this. I don't want it to, because again, like I said, we're going semi-realism here, and that means that things, if you push too hard, things start looking really, really stylized quite quickly. And so you have to be really careful when you work with color, especially. I mean, there are things in the real world that are magnificently colored, like super exotic looking, but typically speaking, those things would not be this type of creature, right? This type of creature isn't the kind of thing we associate with exotic color. And so then if you do that aesthetic to something like this, chances are most people, they're going to fall back on their assumptions of what the world should be and go, that's not believable. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Of course you can do it. It's just a matter of what decisions have you made for your piece, and do you want to stick to them. Okay. Get in here a little bit. I think maybe making the spikes, a few of the spikes this color might look kind of nice. Alright, I think, oh, you know what, his His claws could be this color as well. Alright. I think we're probably good here on color blocking. The next episode, we're going to be talking about shadow and light. Though I was considering just focusing episode 5 on shadow and then doing episode 6 on light, and then I might actually add a 7th episode to this series. I know I said it was going to be a 6-part series, but if I break light and shadow up into their own episodes, which I think might be smart for keeping the time somewhat, digestible, then the 7th video can be last looks. So working with some effects, little things like just pushing those last little bits of the design and little cleanup things you can do and stuff that kind of come after you lay your main light and shadow down. So I might actually turn this into a 7-part series. Chances are pretty high that I will. So next week we'll be talking about getting shadow, starting to push shadows on this guy. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell to get notifications of my videos. As always, like and definitely leave a comment if you have anything to say about what's going on here. If you have a similar process, different process, if you learned anything or whatever, just feel free to comment for sure. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.